Before we get into today's show, whoever comments the most on today's video will get a shout out on a future one. So head down to the comments and spam RTR for Roll Tide Roll as many times as you can. It'll probably need to be about 100 for you to win. I think you guys can make that happen. So spam RTR in the comments section right now. On today's show, we are breaking down the Alabama football roster. We'll go position by position, breaking down the depth charts for the Crimson Tide as they exit the spring and have the bit of the lull until we get into fall camp here. We begin at quarterback. There are 4 players on the roster. It is, by the way, scholarship players. Do want to mention that. Apologies to the walk-ons, but it gets way too muddied if we go beyond that. First up is quarterback 1, Jalen Milroe. He will be a Heisman Trophy contender, I believe, this year. Ty Simpson seems set to be the top backup. Dylan Lonergan and Austin Mack also on the roster. Could see some chances for those guys to play depending on how some of the should-be blowout games end up going. Over now to the running back room, and it's really, I think, a 1A, 1B situation here for Justice Haynes, who I am highly excited about this upcoming season. I cannot wait to see how he plays this upcoming season. He should have a massive breakout season. Jam Miller is also a very good football player. He is primed to have a heavy role with the offense on the ground. Richard Young then is the other top backup behind Haynes and Miller. Remember, he was the other recruit in Haynes' class. 2 freshmen, Daniel Hill, Kevin Riley, round out the running back room. Only 5 deep at the position, but that should be enough, especially given how young this room is. Over to the wide receiving core, and this is going to be quite interesting in terms of how everything eventually plays out, etc. Jeremy Bernard, we'll spend a lot of time on this one, I think is the favorite to be receiver 1, which isn't saying a ton, I suppose. Kendrick Law flashed at times last year. Kobe Prentice actually is the leading returning receiver. Jalen Hill, I think, was primed for a big role, but he's coming off the injury. I doubt we see him play this year. Depending on who you want to cheer for, there are exciting young guys. Emmanuel Henderson, who's now healthy. Ryan Williams. Caleb Odom is going to play receiver, not so much tight end. Aaron Hampton. Even Amari Jefferson. Rico Scott. Aaron Hampton, excuse me. There are young, talented players in this wide receiving core. I have no idea who's going to be wide receiver 1 to 5 each given week. I think there could be a lot of change as the season goes along because there has been change in this room. Prentice is the leading returning receiver at 314 yards for Alabama. Jeremy Bernard did it for Washington. He was going to be their number 1 wide receiver had, he not transferred, had Kalen DeBoer stayed. So I have pretty high expectations for Jeremy Bernard, but I'm excited about Kendrick Law. I want to see Ryan Williams get a chance to play, Caleb Odom, but there's a lot of young, inexperienced unprovenness in this wide receiver room. And that makes it a little bit dicey, I think. So who will be the top wide receiver for Alabama in 2024? There's about 8 guys you could say I went, okay, yeah, I get where you're going for there. Who do you think it'll be? It's the pinned comment on today's video. If the ad comes on YouTube, it's great. Take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. The tight end room, and this is stable, I think is maybe the word I would use for this here. C.J. Dupree is back. Danny Lewis Jr. I drew some praise around this time last year into the fall. They added transfer Josh Wavis from Washington. Robbie Oots is back to be a key blocker. Ty Lockwood, Jay Lindsey. They're not going to play 6 tight ends. There'll be a lot of 11 personnel stuff, I suspect, for Alabama, and they'll have their tight ends block and do some pass catching stuff too. So again, stable is how I feel about that tight end room. The offensive line has been a whirlwind offseason for the offensive line. Elijah Pritchett's out, then he's back in. Caden Proctor's in, then he's out, then he's back in. Parker Brailsford didn't do really anything in the spring. So that's going to be something we have to monitor for Alabama, making sure he's good to go for the fall. The starters are good, right? Proctor, Booker, Brailsford, Roberts, Pritchett. Yeah, there's some inconsistencies. There's some youth. I like that room, that starting group a lot. It's the backups that I go, okay. You know, is Wilkin Formby and Naquel Bertrand ready to, or even maybe Miles McVay, are those guys ready to play in the event of injury? I'm not so sure. I do like adding Gino Vandermark, the Michigan State transfer, to replace James Brockermeyer on the interior. There is young talent, highly touted guys from Casey Poe, Alinian, Joseph Ionata. There's talented depth. But once you get outside the top 5 and even top 6, especially with Vandermark, there's like no snaps there on the offensive line, which could be some trial by fire if, knock on wood, injuries end up happening. Over to the defensive line. I am hopeful for a bounce-back season from Jaheim Otis after he kind of had a not as good sophomore campaign, but some of the stuff we saw as a freshman was really wild there. And then there's good depth, too, and starting caliber players. Tim Smith, Tim Keenan. I like the transfer addition of L-Tier. I think that's a good fit for what Alabama is trying to do on their defensive line now with the new scheme involved there. I'm excited about youngster James Smith. I think Damon Payne, Latham, or not. There's a lot of bodies at defensive tackle, and I do wonder if you see, one more gray shirt or transfer or something come fall camp time, because there is one player extra if the numbers are currently right there. But I do think there's great depth along this defensive line, even if there's not necessarily the next Deron Payne or Jonathan Allen or whatever. So speaking of the run defense here, which I feel pretty good about, what is your confidence level in Alabama stopping the run in 2024? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comments section. Linebackers in a pretty unique spot. First, the bandit and wolf positions, which are edge rushers mostly. There's some blending involved there in terms of how they get utilized. But there's a lot of young, unproven talent, right? Keon Keeley, Quandarius Robinson, Keanu Coate, Quay Russaw, Jeremiah Alexander, Yanze Pierre. There's like a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys on there that have bided their time and waited patiently. We just haven't seen them do it. So I don't think it would surprise anybody if somebody emerges as a 10-sack player. It's just a question of who that ends up being. Linebacker-wise, also good depth. Deontay Lawson is good thing he's back. I think that's a big deal for a defense that lost so much talent this offseason via the draft, via the transfer portal. Jihad Campbell's back. I'm curious if he starts to get pushed a little bit, whether it's Justin Jefferson or one of the younger guys, Dixon, Ross Jones, Okoronkwo probably needs another year or two, Quentin Reese. But again, depth is there. It's who emerges as your top-end, all SEC caliber players beyond Deontay Lawson. All right, over to the secondary. And wow, what a chaotic offseason this has been. We'll mention the starters, quote-unquote, go to the snap counts, that then come back to depth charts here. If we had to guess, and if it's on guess, I think this will change at various points. Damani Jackson, Deshaun Jones are your starting corners. Malachi Moore, Keon Sabb. I actually feel great about those being your starting safeties. I think that's kind of locked in to an extent. And we'll put Devonta Smith there at the Husky spot. These dudes ain't played. The career snap counts, Malachi Moore's got 2,000. Transfer corners, Deshaun Jones and Damani Jackson are both over 700. Transfer safeties, Keon Sabb and Cam Howard are above 300. Transfer other safety who might need a year, but I'm excited about him long term based on what the Penn State people were saying. King Max got 70. And then it's Devonta Smith and Bray Hubbard coming back. That's it. You have more snaps coming in via transfer, or at least close enough to it, than you had with just Malachi Moore. And then you had 61 snaps beyond that. That's what happens when you lose 13 players to the portal and or the NFL draft, 12? Insanity. So I think these are your starting 5. I think the cornerback spot is still wildly up for grabs, and even Husky to a certain extent, especially if what happens is Smith gets hurt again. Going to try King Mack there, maybe? That could be an idea. I think he's a decent fit for that role. Maybe Howard. But then it becomes, hey, which youngster emerges? Is it Zabin Brown, Zay Mincy, Jaleel Hurley, Jalen Mbakwe? They did give Red Morgan some run there at Husky too. Those are good, talented young corners. But again, the common refrain, they ain't played. So how is that all going to go out? I think the cornerback battle in terms of really 1 to 6 on the depth chart on the outside, not including Husky, I think it's up for grabs. Jones is the latest transfer at corner. It was a big one. He needed a veteran experience out there. Will he start in 2024? Y for yes, N for no. Go ahead and sound off in the comments section. The special teams room looks like this. Graham Nicholson, the transfer from Miami, Ohio. He is your kicker. Connor Talty will get another year. We'll see how he develops, but maybe he's in a bit of a tricky spot moving forward. James Burnup back once again, by the way, to handle punter duties. He should be among the best punters in college football this upcoming season. Now, we, and by we I mean producer Chris, much like he did for the spring game, will be doing watch parties this year. It's going to be a blast. Everyone here can't wait. So don't miss out. Hit that sub button right now.